Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name's Anna. I'm one of the program coordinators at the Legal Services for Entrepreneurs program for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. We'll go ahead and get started in about 2 minutes, just letting folks show up. Feel free to send through the chat any questions you may have today. We're going to start with the IRS presentation for the ITIN and EIN information, and then we will have a question and answer portion for the tax attorneys. Hola, bienvenidos a todos. Mi nombre es Ana. Yo trabajo por servicios legales por empresarios. Ahorita vamos a empezar como en 2 minutos. Vamos a tener la presentación primero sobre ITIN y EIN, y vamos a luego tener una porción de la presentación sobre preguntas y respuestas que ustedes tengan para las personas, los abogados de los impuestos. If you need interpretation, there is a world symbol right next to the hand under the Zoom symbols. To the right of it, it says interpretation. Please go ahead and click it to access the Chinese, it's Cantonese, Vietnamese, and Spanish interpretation. Okay, Rena, I will go ahead and give an introduction really quick, and then you can go ahead and start. We have a lot of attendees today, so welcome. My name is Anna, like I mentioned before. I work for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, Legal Services for Entrepreneurs program, and this is part of the Immigrant Business Legal Series that we are presenting in support of immigrant businesses. We are so excited to continue supporting immigrant businesses. All of this information will be recorded today for the portion of the IRS portion, and you can connect with us. I'll send some information over chat about our services that we can provide after the webinar. But yeah, thank you so much, Rena. She's going to go ahead and get us started with the IRS portion that we're going to be talking about ITINs and EINs.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me this late afternoon, evening for a presentation. My name is Rena Newell. I am a stakeholder liaison with the Internal Revenue Service, and I'm from the IRS Communication and Liaison Division. I'm located here in Oakland, California. This is probably a position many of you may not be familiar with, but as a stakeholder liaison, we interact and we engage with the community, with taxpayers, individuals, tax professionals, and community-based organizations, as well as small businesses. And our main goal is to provide tax education, resources, and information to members of the community. Stakeholder liaison delivers information on individual and small business tax initiatives. Anytime there's any type of messaging, anytime there's information that we need to get to the public, we are always right there to provide that information as well. So I'm really glad to have this opportunity to share information on individual tax identification numbers, also known as ITINs, and your employer identification numbers, also known as EINs. As soon as I can turn my PowerPoint. Okay, so today we're going to look at a few topics. We're going to look at each topic we're going to discuss. For ITINs, we're basically going to explain what an ITIN is and how it's used. We're also going to explain how the tax reform impacted the ITIN holders. We're also going to discuss who should and should not renew an ITIN, the ITIN renewal process, and common reasons for delays for processing your application for your ITIN. So I went too far. My apologies, you all. Then we're going to talk about the EIN overview, EIN eligibility, the responsible party, and how to apply for an EIN. So basically, an ITIN, which is under section 61-09, it allows IRS to issue identifying tax identification numbers for tax purposes. Generally, a taxpayer identification number, it's like a social security number. For individuals who are not eligible to receive a social security number, but they still need a taxpayer identification number for US tax purposes. Therefore, they must apply for an ITIN. An ITIN is a 9-digit number issued by the IRS, and it's formatted like a social security number. Each ITIN begins with the number 9, and it has a 4th and 5th digit, and the digits range from 50 to 65, 70 to 88, 90 to 92, and 94 to 99. ITINs are for US federal tax purposes only and are only issued to individuals who have a US filing or reporting requirement and are not eligible to obtain a Social Security number from the Social Security Administration. ITINs are issued regardless of immigration status because both resident and non-resident aliens may have a US filing or reporting requirement. ITINs do not serve any other purpose other than federal tax reporting and are not intended for use outside of the federal tax system. ITINs, they help individuals comply with US tax laws. It encourages voluntary compliance, and it provides a means to effectively process and account for tax returns and any payments for individuals not eligible for a Social Security number. When an ITIN holder does eventually receive a Social Security number, they should immediately notify the IRS so we can merge that Social Security number with your ITIN into one account. An ITIN does not make you eligible to work in the United States. And let me repeat that. The ITIN does not make you eligible to work in the United States. ITINs are issued regardless of your immigration status, but they do not change your immigration status. So there was a Tax Cut and Jobs Act, or TCJA, that occurred in 2017. And it really had some significant changes for the ITIN eligibility for some taxpayers. If you all remember, prior to you filing your return in 2018, you used to get a personal exemption, and you've noticed that that's no longer there. Well, this is what this Tax Cuts and Job Act did. It suspended the deduction for personal expenses for the tax years 2018 through 2025. And as a result, spouses and dependents are not eligible for an ITIN or to renew an ITIN unless they are claimed for an allowable tax benefit or if they file their own federal tax return. The individual must be listed on the attached US federal tax return with the appropriate schedule or form that applies to the allowable benefit that they're claiming. And we'll talk about those benefits coming up shortly. Additionally, most spouses and dependents, they don't need to apply for an ITIN as they no longer have a tax purpose for obtaining an ITIN. Keeping in mind, so there's no confusion, they don't need to apply or renew an ITIN, but if they're not going to basically be filing a return or qualify another individual for a credit or an exemption, not an exemption, an allowable tax benefit, excuse me. So again, this is only for most spouses and dependents, and we'll discuss it in a little bit more detail. How to apply for the I-10? Well, you complete the W-7 or the W-7 in Spanish, and you attach a valid federal income tax return unless you qualify for, as we just spoke about, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. So who should renew? Taxpayers that expect to file a U.S. federal tax return in 2022 should renew their ITINs now if they did not use their ITIN at least once in the last 3 consecutive years. So if you've had an ITIN and you did not use it in tax year 20, 21, or 22, your ITIN will expire December 31st of 2023. So you'll need to take actions to renew it as expeditiously as you can if you in fact will be filing a return and or have one of the benefits, allowable benefits. So ITINs with the middle digits 70 through 88, or ITINs with the middle digits 90, 91, 92, 94, 95, 96, 97, or 99 that were assigned before 2013 and have not already been renewed, well, those have expired. Sorry, you all. Okay, so if you right side. 1 second, sorry. Okay. So what you will receive from the Internal Revenue Service in regards to if you need to renew is what we call a CP 48. And it'll come to you and it'll include the information basically indicating that you must renew your individual tax identification number to file your U.S. tax return. If you or someone listed on your return has an I-10 with the middle numbers 88, 90, 91, 92, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, or 99. So basically it'll give you, the letter will give you a breakdown of the digits, the 2 digits that have expired, and you can take the action to file the renew, I should say, your ITIN number. So ITINs for tax years after December 31st of 2017 for spouses and dependents who could have been claimed in previous years for the personal exemption are not eligible for an I-10 or to renew an I-10 unless they qualify for the allowable tax benefit or they file their own return. The individual must be listed on the U.S. federal tax return with the schedule or the form that applies to the allowable tax benefit. So who should not renew are basically taxpayers who don't need to file a return. In the case of a spouse or dependent who will not be included on the U.S. federal tax return in 2022. I-10s are used only on third-party information returns. So if you just file a 1099, if you use your I-10 to file a form 1099, then you don't need to renew it. They can continue to use the I-10 for this purpose, even if it's no longer valid for use on a tax return. But if the taxpayer subsequently needs to submit a tax return, then they'll need to renew their I-10 at that time. The other reason one doesn't need to renew is if they've become a U.S. citizen or a legal resident alien and they were provided with a social security number. So you'll have to provide your social security number and your previous I-10, and you'll contact the I-10 operations, that's ITIN operations, or call IRS at our toll-free number, 1-800-829-1040. And once you have a conversation with a representative representative from IRS and provide documentation, they will submit the ITIN and the Social Security number. They'll merge it together into one account, I should say. In addition, other individuals, again, and you're hearing me say this a lot because it's important, because at one point in time, spouses and dependents, they were able to be claimed, but now we don't need that since 2017. So taxpayers should not renew ITINs if spouses and dependents who could have been claimed for a personal exemption should not renew their ITINs unless, one, they're filing their own return, and two, they qualify for the allowable tax benefit credit. Either it's a primary taxpayer, being qualifying someone for head of household, the other dependent credits, or the premium tax credits. So again, the key in all these for individuals that are spouses or dependents, if in fact the spouse or the dependent qualifies the primary taxpayer for an allowable credit, then they should renew their ITINs. So in order to renew, you have to complete the form W-7, and it's available on irs.gov. And as I indicated, it's in English as well as in Spanish. And IRS is working toward getting more languages for everyone, so everyone can get the same information and understand it in the language that's most appropriate for them. So taxpayers will need to check that they ensure that they check every box, the appropriate box. And for renewal, you make sure you check the box that says renew an existing ITIN. Submit all the required documentation, including original documents or certified copies of documents by the issuing agency. The documents must be consistent with the applicant's information provided on the Form W-7. Example, if you had a name change due to marriage, then you must attach a copy of the marriage certificate to verify that. Additionally, you must check a reason for applying for the I-10. Non-resident alien following a U.S. federal tax return, or U.S. resident alien based on the days present in the United States, or dependent of U.S. citizen or a resident alien. Again, all family members associated with a single return can renew at the same time if at least one of the family members' I-10 is expiring. If a taxpayer is renewing an existing I-10, they may submit the Form W-7 renewal application without attaching a tax return. But if renewing a spouse or a dependent and they're claiming an allowable tax benefit, then you must attach a federal return to prove the allowable tax benefit of head of household or any other credit that one may be entitled to. There are a few ways to submit your W-7 for renewal. Taxpayers can renew by submitting this W-7 and required documentation directly to the IRS by U.S. postal mail. I truly wouldn't encourage that. In terms of your documents, we hope and pray, truth in all honesty, but if there's and I'll share some other ways which I think are most appropriate to ensure you get your documentation. But you can do snail mail if you so desire. The processing time is 7 weeks. During peak season, it's 9 to 11 weeks. And your original or certified documents from the issuing agency that submitted your application, they should be returned to you within 60 days. And if applicants haven't received their documentation with IRS within 60 days, then you should give us a call back so we can ensure that you get your documentation. Another way is to utilize a certifying accepting agent, I should say, or CAA. It's an important part of the ITIN application process. CAA meets with taxpayers. They conduct the interviews to determine the ITIN eligibility, either face-to-face or through video technology. And be advised that the CAA can charge a fee sometimes for their service. And we'll share more information later with you on that. But that is probably one of the better options. And then the last option that we have is you can basically go to one of our tax offices, our tax assistance centers, where you can meet with someone in person in a designated tax assistance center locations. They can review the Form W-7 and they can authenticate all original and certified copies of documents for primary and secondary taxpayers, and the passports, the national identification card, and birth certificates for dependents. So to use this service, taxpayers must schedule an appointment before visiting the location. And you can go to irs.gov and look at tax assistance centers, also known as TAC, to find a location and to schedule an appointment, or you can always call 844-545-5640. So when you submit them, sometimes there are issues with errors. And some of the reasons for errors are the correct W-7, the box on the W-7, I should say, is not correctly checked. An example, reason C, U.S. resident alien who is based who's filing a U.S. tax return not required to attach a return when renewing, but must check the reason for applying. Okay, so they're just looking for consistency. Basically, they're saying if you're a resident alien, you're filing a return and you're not required to attach a return when renewing, but you must check the box for the reason you're applying for it so they know. Example B, non-resident alien filing a U.S. federal tax return. They must provide a complete foreign address on line 3. If the applicant no longer has a foreign address due to their relocation to the United States, they may be a resident alien for tax purposes based on the number of days and should therefore apply under box C. So it's really just a mix-up of checking the appropriate box. So I think these are good pointers. Not submitting the required original identification documents or certified copies from the issuing agency with the renewing Form W-7. And here's some examples of the documentation that you can use: birth certificates, passports, driver's license, a passport without a date of entry for dependents, effective October 1st of 2016. Only a passport with a U.S. entry date is acceptable now as a standalone identification documents for some dependents. Dependents of the U.S. military personnel stationed overseas are exempt from this policy. Documentation of a name change, for example, marriage or divorce certificate. Documentation to prove residency. A U.S. medical or school records for dependents under age of 6. School records for dependents age 6 and over, but under 18. And U.S. school records if a student. Rental statements, bank statements, or utility bills listing the applicant's name and U.S. address if over the age of 18. So it's a little different documentation depending on the age of the individuals that they're going to be requesting. Some of the other common errors that we have is taxpayers are not submitting the original documents for proof of U.S. residency. And this is probably where going to a tax office that I indicated earlier, or going to a CAA, because they're going to definitely ensure that the required documents are presented. So proof of U.S. residency for applicants who are dependents. A passport that doesn't have a date of entry won't be accepted as a standalone identification document for dependents unless they are U.S. military personnel stationed overseas. In these cases, applicants will be required to submit at least one of the following original documents in addition to the passport to prove U.S. residency. So if there's a child under the age of 6, U.S. medical records, school records, or U.S. state identification card that lists the applicant's name and U.S. address, or a U.S. visa. If the child is at least 6 years of age but under 18, U.S. school record, U.S. state identification card, or driver's license that lists the applicant's name and the U.S. address or a U.S. visa. If 18 of age years or older, a U.S. school record, rental statement from the U.S. property, a utility bill for a U.S. property, or a bank statement, U.S. state identification card, or a driver's license that lists the applicant's name and the U.S. address or U.S. visa. Applicants claimed as dependents on a prior year return must also, and that's, before 2018, must also prove U.S. residency if the passport doesn't have a date of entry, unless the applicant is from Canada or Mexico, or is the dependent of U.S. military personnel stationed overseas. In these cases, applicants should be required to submit at least one of the original documents from the list earlier, in addition to the passport to prove U.S. residency. So submitting a federal tax return with an expired ITIN until the ITIN is renewed, a return with an expired ITIN, it will be processed and treated as timely filed, but it will be processed without certain tax credits. So basically they're saying, we'll go ahead and process, even though your ITIN is expired, we'll process the return, but if you were eligible for any of those allowable tax benefits, you probably won't get those until you get a renewed ITIN. Okay. So now I'm going to change my focus to the certifying agencies. And any CAA accepted agencies that are out there, they're currently still processing documentation for ITIN, but we have on hold any new CAAs until there's a moratorium. So individuals who may be trying to open a CAA, they will not be able to open a new CAA. And that moratorium is until, I believe, the end of this year, but that date could be prolonged, but we'll see. But at any rate, CAAs are very critical to the success of the ITIN program because of their proximity and their availability to taxpayers who need ITINs. Although the use of ITINs is currently on hold, as I indicated, CAA organizations include educational institutions, financial institutions, government entities, militaries, community-based organizations, and tax practitioners. And the CAAs, they facilitate the ITIN application process by verifying, I should say, the foreign status and identity of applicants and mail the complete application package directly to the IRS. This allows taxpayers to keep their original documents instead of submitting them to the IRS. The CAAs must have the original or certified copies of documents in hand during the interview to authenticate the document. CAAs can authenticate all acceptable ITIN documents for primary and secondary taxpayers except for the foreign military card. And for dependents, CAs can only authenticate passports and birth certificates. All other documents must be an original or certified copy for the issuing agency. So, as I indicated before, there are 3 ways for the processing of your W-7, whether it's a renewal or it's getting a new one. And I would encourage, if you were able to go into a tax assistance center or a tax office, IRS will basically review the documents and or utilizing a CAA. As I indicated before, some of the CAAs do charge a price for their services, but IRS, of course, we do not. I don't know if you want to pause at this point in time, Anna, before I go into EINs, or do you want me to just wrap it up?
Yeah, there are a couple questions that came in through the chat.
Mhm.
One was, how do we know if the ITIN expired and we did not get a letter for renewal?
So do you know when you received it? Did you receive it prior? Well, couple of reasons, couple of things. If you have not used it within the last 3 years, 2021 and 22, and then basically going back, if your ITIN has a number, now you might want to jot these down because sometimes you don't get a letter from IRS. Um, any ITINs with the numbers truthfully 90 through 99, and if they were assigned to you before 2013, they have expired. However, if you haven't used them within the last 3 years, if they came after 2013 in 2021 and 22, they will be expiring at the end of this year.
Thanks, Rena. I think similarly, folks are wondering if there is a website to check if the ITIN is
IRS.gov and go to ITINs.
Thank you.
Mhm.
There is another question, might be more relevant to our, it says, can an immigrant seeking to do business obtain an ITIN prior to filing for taxes? When starting a business, most business permits will request a tax ID.
So they haven't gotten an ITIN yet?
It doesn't sound like it, but maybe we can clarify in the chat. Well, that's from Walter. Yes, it says correct, no ITIN yet.
Okay, so how have they reported income to him?
I'm just waiting for the follow-up on the
No,
Q&A.
no problem.
It says, no, they are starting a business to generate income.
Okay, okay. So he so he doesn't, well, he can still apply for it. He can apply for an ITIN. Even though he's basically hasn't received income, he's here and he's basically going to be receiving income. I would apply for it, even if I would apply for it. Just apply for it, and then we'll see where the second part of what I'm going to talk about, what he may need to consider down the line as well.
Thanks, Rena. We do have another question, but I think we'll save that for our tax attorneys.
Okay.
It seems, and then also I think would be more helpful for Juliet to apply to our legal clinic.
Okay.
But we will send some information over chat.
Okay. All righty. So the next number that we're going to talk about is an employer identification number. And this basically has to do with individuals who operate a business. It's also known as the federal identification number. and it's also a unique 9-digit number is assigned by the Internal Revenue Service. For business entities, you can be a sole proprietor, corporation, partnership. It's also for states, trusts, and certain individuals and other entities filing returns or for reporting purposes. Meaning sometimes if you have employees, you can also secure an EIN number. Okay. They're issued for the purpose of tax administration, and they're not intended for participation in any other activities. It is used to identify the tax account of employers and certain others who have no employees. For the EIN, you can apply for it online. It's probably the most efficient way to apply for it. But basically, you must apply for EIN if you're located in the United States or US territories. And the person that's applying for the EIN, they must have a valid taxpayer identification number or an ITIN or an EIN. So an individual who has an ITIN, you can also have an EIN, okay? You are limited to one EIN per responsible party per day. So what is a responsible person or a responsible party? A responsible person is identified as the person that should have a level of control or entitlement to the funds or the assets in that entity. As a practical matter, it enables a person directly or indirectly to control, manage, or direct the entity and the disposition of funds and assets. Unless the government is a government, unless the applicant is a government entity, the responsible party must be an individual and not an entity. You apply for EIN. Basically, you can apply through the internet. The EIN application online is the preferred method for customers to apply for and obtain an EIN. Once the application is completed, the information is validated during the online session, and an EIN is issued immediately. The online application process is available for all entities whose principal business, office, or agency or legal residence is located in the United States for US territories. If the taxpayer's fax number is provided, a fax will be sent. If they apply for it via fax, your EIN will be received within 4 days. Processing time frame for EIN application received by mail is 4 weeks. So ensure that your SS4, which is the form that you complete, contains all the required information. If it is determined that the entity needs a new EIN, one will be assigned using the appropriate procedures for the entity type and mailed to the taxpayer. And for more information in regards to a W-4, not a W-4, a SS4, and where to file, you can go to irs.gov, where to file taxes for Form SS4. And this next slide is basically a glimpse of the W-4, SS4, my apologies, SS4. You can basically, again, indicate that you can do it online. The area that I spoke about for the responsible party, that information is in 7A. So that's important. They're basically looking for the name of the individual that's responsible for this EIN number. Oops. Okay. And as I indicated, the best and the most preferred way to apply for the EIN is to go online, irs.gov, employer ID numbers, and this will pop up, and you're able to just process it where it says apply for your EIN. It'll walk you through the various prompts for you to apply for the EIN. And for clarification purposes, I want to make sure you understand that the ITIN is for individuals that are not eligible for a social security number, whereas the EIN is basically for individuals with businesses. If you have a sole proprietor, a partnership, and or a corporation, you're entitled to an EIN to basically handle your business return filing, anything that has to do with that number that will be assigned to you is the number that you will use to file your returns and make payments to IRS. So it's a separate number from your individual, whether it's an ITIN or SSN, and then your business number. This number, the EIN number, will only apply to your business. Okay, I hope I've shared some pretty good information for you all as it relates to ITINs. I'm going to leave you some resources. Definitely go to irs.gov. And one thing that I like to clarify is if you're looking for anything on irs.gov, just put it in the search box. If you find it and you see it in English, there's a box at the top of the page, and it's a drop down box, and we have about 7 or 8 different languages. We have, I'm looking at it now, we have Chinese, we have Spanish. Hold on, real quick. I'm just looking on another. Spanish, Vietnamese. So we do have some, and as I indicated, IRS is working really hard to ensure that everybody receives the same information. So we're complaining all the time that we need more languages, so we're really working on that. If there's any input that you all have for me, please share it with Anna or Nicole, and we'll definitely try to address your needs. If there's any other questions that you all have, or you have any information that you like to share with me, please reach out to me. And that kind of concludes what I had to share with you all today.
Thank you, Rena. So much valuable information. There are some questions that I think we can spend a few minutes, and then we'll go ahead and switch over to our folks that are supporting us with the Q&A. So there is a question so it's based on the information that was shared regarding ITIN. Is it possible that the EIN also has an expiration date?
No, the EIN does not have an expiration date. The IRS, if in fact you no longer, your entity type changes, you can basically, if you go from, let's say, a corporation, from a sole proprietor to a corporation, you'd have to let us know so we can basically close out that EIN. Or if in fact you go out of business, you would also let us know that you're no longer operating, and let us know. We'll close out that EIN for you. But an EIN goes on as long as your business is in existence. The only thing that will terminate an EIN is basically if you advise us or one of the responsible parties pass on or something of that nature. But we'll have, so no, to answer your question, no, it doesn't expire.
Thank you, Rena. Another question: what are the what are the requirements to get an EIN?
Basically, if you're a sole proprietor, a partnership, or corporation, you're in business, you have a business, then you can apply for an EIN.
Thank you. And then if someone started a business, but then the business closed, what are the steps to cancel your EIN?
So closing out an EIN number, is it the 88? Hold on, let me look. That's a change of address. So if you close out your business, He's closing out the whole business, correct?
Yes, it sounds like it.
I'm a little rusty on that. Hold on one sec. What I can do, I can give him the actual link and I can put that in the chat after I finish up, if that's okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think we'll take one more question from the Q&A. Once you have an EIN, do you also need an ITIN?
They serve different purposes. So the I-10 is for the individual. Okay, so if you're filing your individual taxes, then you'll need a social security number or an ITIN number. But if you have an EIN, that means you're in business and you're going to be filing a business return, whether it's a Schedule C or a corporation or a partnership. So they're two separate numbers. Don't mix them up. The I-10 and the Social Security number is used for your individual taxes, and the EIN number is used for your business taxes. Did I clarify that?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Rena. Uh, Maybe we'll take one last question. There's a lot that just came in, and so maybe we can circle back with folks over the Q&A part. It says in the form they ask whether we're going to hire employees in the next year, but I'm not sure what happens if I check the box and I do not hire someone.
Well, we're going to know if you hire someone because as an employer, you'll have a requirement to pay wages and file 941 employment tax returns. And it's okay if you don't check the box and you say at the time you don't, or no, you don't check the box. But when you do get employees, how it's all going to come into effect is the the EIN number. When you file your employment tax returns, it will have that number and we'll basically know that this individual now has employees.
Thank you so much, Rena. If you wanted to stick around and we can answer some of the other questions towards the end after the other folks are presenting. If not, we can circle back with some resources for folks over email. If you I'm gonna send out the recording of this portion of the webinar to all participants, and I will
Okay.
be also sending out any resources for folks, and I'm assuming you have like a number or something folks can call if they have additional questions, or maybe an email address.
Yep. You want me to put that in the chat as well?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. Okay. And I'm gonna also, I'll hold on, I'll let you all do your thing. I want to answer that last question for closing out the business and the EIN.
Thank you so much. We're gonna thank you so much, Rena. We're gonna stop the recording for this portion. And then